By age 65, nearly 1 in 3 adults will face serious memory challenges. But here's what most seniors don't know: memory loss is not always inevitable. There are ways to fight back. Imagine waking up, looking into the eyes of your spouse or grandchild, and for a terrifying moment, their name is gone. That fear is real, and it's called the silent thief of memory. It creeps in quietly: misplaced keys, forgotten recipes, repeated questions, and then it takes more. But here's the good news: modern science shows your brain can still adapt, rewire, even grow stronger at 60, 70, or beyond. In this video, we'll uncover what doctors rarely explain, how aging affects your brain, and the daily choices that can protect your most precious memories. So stay with us until the end, and subscribe, because what you learn here could change how you age, and how you remember, for the rest of your life. Imagine this: a grandfather sits in his favorite chair, holding a photo of his granddaughter. He smiles, but when asked her name, he hesitates. A pause too long. The word is there, locked away somewhere in his mind, but it will not surface. He laughs it off, saying, "It's on the tip of my tongue." Everyone smiles politely, but deep inside, a quiet fear rises. Was this just a slip, or the beginning of something greater? Memory loss rarely announces itself with a bang. It tiptoes in, subtle and deceptive, disguising itself as ordinary forgetfulness. At first, it's a misplaced pair of glasses, a missed appointment, a forgotten name. Small cracks in the pavement of daily life. But these tiny cracks may signal deeper shifts happening within the brain. Neuroscientists call it mild cognitive impairment, the gray zone between normal age-related forgetfulness and more serious conditions like dementia. Studies show that by age 65, nearly 40% of adults experience noticeable memory lapses. Yet many dismiss them, believing it's simply old age. Here lies the silent danger: the earlier signs are ignored, the more power memory loss gains. Picture Mary, a retired schoolteacher. For decades she was sharp, able to recall every student's name and every lesson plan. Then, slowly, she began mixing up her students' faces in old yearbooks. One afternoon, while baking, she added salt instead of sugar, ruining a family recipe she'd made for 40 years. Her daughter brushed it off: "Mom's just distracted." But Mary knew something was different. The recipes she once carried in her head now slipped through her fingers like water. What is happening inside Mary's brain, and the brain of that grandfather in his chair? Aging neurons begin to lose efficiency. The brain's hippocampus, the region that encodes new memories, shrinks with age, making recall more difficult. Proteins like beta amyloid may start to accumulate, forming plaques that interfere with communication between brain cells. The result: moments of blankness, like static on a once clear channel. Yet here's the part many seniors never hear: memory loss is not always inevitable, nor is it always irreversible. The brain, even at 70 or 80, can adapt, reroute, and even grow new connections. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself, is alive, even in later years. Scientists at Harvard have shown that seniors who engage in mental challenges, crosswords, new languages, musical instruments, actually build new neural pathways. The danger lies in underestimating those little lapses. Every forgotten name, every misplaced item, can be an early whisper from the brain, urging attention. If ignored, those whispers may swell into a storm. But what if, instead of dismissing the first forgotten name, we saw it as a signal? What if those tiny lapses were not the end of clarity, but the beginning of an opportunity to act, to protect, to strengthen? As we move forward, we will enter the hidden architecture of the brain itself, peeling back the curtain on how age reshapes memory. And more importantly, we'll uncover what you can do, starting today, to defend against this silent thief. Because the story of aging and memory does not have to be one of loss. It can be one of resilience. Close your eyes and picture a bustling city at night. Streets glow with lights, intersections hum with movement, and signals guide the flow of cars and people. This is how your brain works every second of your life, an intricate city of billions of neurons, each firing, connecting, and passing signals across delicate pathways. But what happens when the city ages? Roads crumble, signals weaken, and traffic begins to jam. That is the hidden architecture of the aging brain. The human brain is made up of about 86 billion neurons. Each neuron reaches out with branching arms, connecting with thousands of others through synapses. These connections form the basis of memory, every childhood birthday, every recipe, every face you've ever loved. Think of synapses as bridges. When they're strong, information flows easily. When they weaken, memories slip through the cracks. As we age, several subtle but profound changes occur inside this architecture. The hippocampus, which acts as the brain's memory hub, naturally shrinks. Studies from the Mayo Clinic reveal that by the age of 70, the hippocampus may be up to 15% smaller than in young adulthood. Alongside this, the brain's frontal lobe, the region that organizes thoughts, plans, and decisions, begins to thin. White matter, the wiring that connects different regions, frays like old electrical cords. But the most insidious change comes from proteins that accumulate quietly, often years before symptoms appear. Beta-amyloid plaques and tau tangles, the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease, disrupt communication between neurons. Imagine trying to drive through a city where bridges are blocked and roads are tangled. It becomes nearly impossible to reach your destination. Now imagine John, a retired engineer who once built bridges in the real world. He prided himself on his memory, able to recall blueprints decades later. But as he aged, his own inner bridges began to falter. At first, it was forgetting why he walked into a room. Later, it became forgetting entire conversations. For John, the irony was painful. The man who built strong bridges outside was losing the ones inside his brain. Doctors often remind families that not all memory loss signals disease. Normal aging does change the brain, but it doesn't always lead to dementia. What matters is how the architecture is maintained. Just like a city invests in repairing streets and upgrading signals, the brain needs maintenance too, through nutrition, exercise, mental stimulation, and social connection. And here lies a powerful truth: even as neurons die, the brain can compensate. Through neuroplasticity, other regions can take over lost functions. In one groundbreaking study at the University of California, older adults who learned digital photography showed measurable growth in brain connectivity after just 3 months. It's as if the brain was laying down new roads to bypass the damaged ones. But if the architecture can adapt, why do so many still fall victim to the silent thief of memory? Because not all changes are visible until it's too late. The early stages are hidden, silent construction zones deep inside the brain, where neurons are already struggling. By the time daily life is affected, years of silent damage may have passed. That's why the key is recognition. Noticing subtle signs, taking longer to recall a name, struggling to follow a recipe, losing track of appointments, can mean the difference between early intervention and late crisis. The brain's hidden architecture is not fixed, it is alive, fragile, and responsive. Like a city, it can thrive if cared for, or collapse if neglected. But here's the haunting question: if memory lives in these fragile connections, what happens when even daily routines, simple, ordinary actions, begin to unravel? That is where we turn next, when routine turns to confusion, and the ordinary becomes unfamiliar. It begins quietly, almost unnoticeably. A senior stands in the kitchen, holding a familiar carton of milk, staring at it as if it were foreign. She knows she should pour it into the coffee mug, but for a fleeting moment, the steps escape her. Or consider the widower who has mowed his lawn every Saturday morning for 40 years. One day, he pulls the mower out of the shed and suddenly cannot recall how to start it. These are the moments when routine turns to confusion, a chilling sign that the silent thief has reached deeper into the brain. For decades, neuroscientists have studied how memory and routine are tied together. The hippocampus records new memories, but the basal ganglia and prefrontal cortex are what transform repeated actions into habits. Together, they create the invisible scripts that govern daily life: making morning coffee, buttoning a shirt, following the same route to church. When these systems weaken with age, even the simplest routines can feel disjointed, like a familiar song suddenly skipping its notes. Let's return to Mary, the retired schoolteacher we met earlier. Her daily life was once structured by routines: a morning walk, reading the paper, preparing breakfast. But recently, her daughter noticed troubling changes. One morning, Mary placed the coffee grounds directly into the water reservoir of the machine. Another time, she dressed herself with her blouse inside out and didn't notice. Small mistakes, but each one pierced her daughter's heart. They weren't just slips, they were signals. Doctors call this stage functional decline. It's the point where lapses move from mere forgetfulness into disruptions of daily living. According to the National Institute on Aging, these changes often mark the boundary between normal age-related forgetfulness and early dementia. Confusion in routine tasks suggests that the brain's wiring is not just fraying, it's short-circuiting. For families, the emotional toll is immense. A son might recall his father once teaching him to tie his shoelaces. Now, he watches helplessly as that same father struggles to tie his own. These reversals stir feelings of grief, frustration, and helplessness. The roles of parent and child begin to blur, creating what psychologists call ambiguous loss. The person is still there, but the essence of who they were begins to slip away. And yet, here is an important truth: confusion does not mean the end of independence. Studies show that with the right support, visual reminders, simplified routines, adaptive tools, many seniors can maintain dignity and autonomy for far longer than expected. Something as simple as labeling drawers, setting alarms for medications, or creating a checklist for morning tasks can act like scaffolding for a weakening structure. There's also a neurological reason to hope. While the hippocampus may shrink, other parts of the brain can step in. In fact, seniors who actively engage in cognitive training, puzzles, memory games, even practicing new skills, often show improvements in daily functioning. It's as though the brain builds detours around the damaged pathways, allowing routine to be relearned in a new way. But this adaptation comes with a warning. Once routine turns to confusion, it often signals that deeper battles are underway. The question then becomes, what silent forces are accelerating this erosion? What invisible culprits are weakening the architecture of memory faster than time alone? To answer that, we must step beyond the kitchen and the living room, into the bedroom, where two powerful forces, stress and sleep, quietly decide the fate of memory. It is midnight. The house is silent, but inside one senior's mind, storms are raging. Thoughts race, unpaid bills, an upcoming doctor's visit, the ache in the knee that won't go away. He tosses, he turns, the ceiling fan spinning above him like the hands of a restless clock. Hours slip by. When the morning finally arrives, his body feels heavy, and his mind foggy. He reaches for his reading glasses, then forgets where he set them down. That day, his memory seems fractured, his focus weak. Was it just age, or the hidden hand of stress and poor sleep? Modern neuroscience has revealed a powerful truth: memory does not simply live in the brain, it depends on rest. During deep sleep, especially in the stage called slow-wave sleep, the brain replays the day's events, transferring short-term memory stored in the hippocampus into long-term storage across the cortex. It is like a librarian carefully moving books from a crowded desk to the archive shelves. Without enough sleep, those books remain piled in disarray, vulnerable to being lost. Studies from Harvard Medical School confirm that seniors who sleep fewer than 6 hours a night show sharper declines in memory and attention. The brain deprived of rest cannot complete its nightly housekeeping, leaving neurons clogged with waste proteins like beta-amyloid. Over time, this accumulation not only clouds memory but raises the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Then there is stress, the invisible thief that works hand in hand with sleeplessness. When the body feels stress, it releases cortisol, a hormone designed for survival. In short bursts, cortisol sharpens focus. But chronic stress, stretching over weeks or years, is toxic to the hippocampus. Think of it as acid slowly corroding the very walls of memory. Seniors under prolonged stress often report difficulty concentrating, recalling names, or learning new information. Consider Eleanor, a 72-year-old caregiver for her husband who suffered a stroke. Night after night, she lies awake listening for his movements, afraid he might fall. Her sleep is fragmented, her body tense. Soon, she finds herself forgetting appointments, misplacing medications, struggling to follow recipes she once knew by heart. Eleanor's decline is not just age, it is the combined assault of stress and sleepless nights on her memory. But there is hope here, too. The brain is remarkably responsive to even small changes in rest and relaxation. In one Stanford University study, seniors who practiced mindfulness meditation for just 20 minutes a day not only reduced stress but showed measurable improvements in memory recall. Similarly, adopting sleep hygiene practices, like keeping a regular bedtime, reducing evening caffeine, dimming lights, and creating a calm bedtime ritual, significantly improved cognitive function in older adults. Some doctors now encourage what they call cognitive rest therapy. It means treating sleep as sacred, as medicine for the mind. Just as one would never skip a dose of life-saving medication, one must not dismiss the healing role of a full night's rest. Yet here lies a deeper question: if food, movement, stress, and sleep all affect memory, then how much control do we truly have? Is memory purely a victim of biology, or can we use daily choices to fight back against decline? To answer this, we move into the heart of daily life, onto the dinner table, where what we eat can either sharpen the mind's edge or quietly dull it. A warm bowl of oatmeal sprinkled with berries. A piece of salmon glistening with lemon juice. A handful of walnuts, cracked open on a sunny afternoon. To many, these are just foods. But to the aging brain, they are medicine, tiny shields against the slow erosion of memory. For decades, scientists believed memory decline was simply the price of aging. But recent studies show that diet can slow, even reverse, aspects of cognitive decline. The brain, though small, is one of the hungriest organs in the body, consuming nearly 20% of our daily calories. And just as a car runs poorly on low-grade fuel, the brain falters when fed poorly. One of the most groundbreaking findings comes from research on the Mediterranean diet, rich in vegetables, olive oil, fish, nuts, and whole grains. Seniors who follow this diet consistently show lower rates of memory loss and Alzheimer's disease. A 2018 study published in Neurology revealed that older adults who adhered closely to this diet preserved more gray matter volume in the brain, especially in regions critical for memory. It's as though the food itself nourished the architecture of memory. But why these foods? Omega-3 fatty acids, found in fish like salmon and sardines, fortify the brain's cell membranes and improve communication between neurons. Antioxidants in berries protect the brain from oxidative stress, the slow rusting process that damages cells over time. Leafy greens like spinach and kale are rich in folate and vitamin K, both linked to sharper cognition. Even spices such as turmeric, with its active compound curcumin, have been shown to reduce inflammation in the brain and improve memory performance. Now picture Harold, a retired mechanic in his late 60s. For years, he lived on convenience foods, fried chicken, processed meats, and soda. By the time he turned 70, he noticed increasing brain fog and struggled with recall. After his doctor recommended dietary changes, Harold switched to a Mediterranean-style diet. At first, he resisted. Salads and salmon weren't his comfort foods. But slowly, something changed. After 6 months, his energy improved. His daughter noticed he followed conversations more easily and remembered details from their chats. Harold hadn't regained the sharpness of his 40s, but he had built a protective barrier against the thief of memory. And the beauty is, it's never too late. Researchers at Rush University Medical Center developed the Mind Diet, a blend of Mediterranean and dietary approaches to stop hypertension diets. Seniors who followed the Mind Diet, even moderately, reduced their risk of Alzheimer's disease by as much as 35%. For those who followed it strictly, the reduction was closer to 53%. Imagine that, by changing what's on your plate, you could cut your risk in half. But food is not only fuel, it is memory itself. The smell of baked bread might remind you of your mother's kitchen. The taste of apple pie might bring back childhood holidays. For seniors experiencing memory decline, familiar foods often trigger moments of clarity, unlocking doors to the past that words alone cannot open. Families sometimes call this the taste bridge, where one bite can light up forgotten places in the brain. Yet here's the question that lingers: if food can protect the brain, what else can rebuild it? Beyond the dinner table lies another secret weapon: movement. Not just for the body, but for the mind. Because the next frontier in protecting memory is not found in recipes, but in footsteps. The morning sun rises over a quiet neighborhood. A 72-year-old man laces up his sneakers, steps outside, and begins his walk. To passers-by, it looks like nothing more than a daily stroll. But inside his body, a revolution is happening. With each step, his heart pumps oxygen-rich blood to his brain. With each stride, chemicals are released that protect neurons and spark new connections. Exercise is not just for the body, it is fuel for the mind. For decades, scientists thought brain cells simply died off as we aged, never to be replaced. But research over the past 20 years has shattered that belief. At Harvard Medical School, studies revealed that aerobic exercise stimulates neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons, in the hippocampus, the very region that controls memory. Imagine that, even at 70 or 80, the brain can grow new cells, like fresh shoots sprouting from an old tree. But exercise offers more than new cells. It improves the flow of blood and oxygen, delivering vital nutrients to keep neurons alive. It increases levels of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, often called fertilizer for the brain, which strengthens existing connections and helps form new ones. Seniors who engage in regular physical activity often show sharper memory, faster thinking, and even larger hippocampal volume compared to sedentary peers. Consider Susan, a 68-year-old grandmother who once lived a sedentary life. She struggled with memory slips and often lost track of her thoughts mid-sentence. At her doctor's urging, she joined a simple walking group at her local senior center. 3 months later, she noticed something remarkable. She could recall her grocery list without writing it down. She followed her granddaughter's school stories without drifting off. Exercise had not only improved her stamina, it had rekindled her clarity. And the benefits are not confined to long jogs or intense workouts. Even moderate movement, brisk walking, gardening, dancing, tai chi, triggers profound effects on the brain. In fact, a study published in the Journal of Alzheimer's Disease found that seniors who engaged in just 150 minutes of moderate activity each week reduced their risk of cognitive decline by nearly 40%. Exercise also combats two silent enemies of memory, stress and inflammation. When we move, the body lowers cortisol levels, easing the corrosive effect of chronic stress on the hippocampus. At the same time, physical activity reduces systemic inflammation, which is linked to faster brain aging. It's as if every walk, every stretch, every dance is not only a step toward physical health, but also a shield against the silent thief of memory. Yet there is an emotional layer too. Group exercise, whether it's ballroom dancing, water aerobics, or community tai chi, creates social bonds. Laughter and conversation during these sessions boost mood, fight loneliness, and give seniors something powerful, joy. And joy, researchers have found, is itself a cognitive protector. Still, exercise opens another question. If the body and mind are so intertwined, what happens to families when memory begins to fade? What happens to the people who watch their loved ones change? That is where we must go next, into the living rooms and hospital rooms where families face the silent struggle together. It often begins with something small. A son notices his father repeating the same story twice in one evening. A daughter finds her mother wandering the house at night, unsure of where the bathroom is. At first, these moments are brushed off, he's just tired, or mom's having a senior moment. But over time, the truth can no longer be ignored. Memory loss does not affect only the individual, it reverberates through the family like a quiet earthquake, shifting roles, reshaping bonds, and testing love. For caregivers, the experience can be heartbreaking. Imagine Linda, a middle-aged daughter caring for her 80-year-old mother. Linda remembers the woman who once guided her through childhood, who cooked her favorite meals, who gave advice after a first heartbreak. Now, Linda watches her mother forget her name. The reversal of roles feels cruel, the child becomes the parent, the caretaker becomes the cared for. Psychologists call this phenomenon the caregiver's grief, mourning the loss of a loved one while they are still physically present. Statistics paint a sobering picture. In the United States, more than 11 million family members provide unpaid care for loved ones with dementia or serious memory decline. Many spend over 20 hours a week on caregiving tasks, helping with meals, bathing, managing medications, while also balancing jobs and raising children. Caregiver burnout is real, stress levels soar, depression rates climb, and physical health suffers. One study from the Alzheimer's Association found that 40% of caregivers report high levels of emotional distress. Yet within this struggle, stories of resilience shine. Families discover new ways to connect, even when words fade. A father who no longer recognizes his son might still light up when hearing an old Sinatra song they once sang together. A grandmother who forgets her daughter's name may still laugh when holding her great-grandchild's hand. Memory may slip, but emotion, the deep human bond, often remains. Doctors and support groups often remind families that they are not alone. Across the country, community centers host memory cafes, where families can gather to share stories, find support, and experience moments of joy together. For many, these groups become lifelines, offering not only advice but compassion, a reminder that others walk the same difficult road. But even with support, families are haunted by questions. How much will worsen? How quickly? What warning signs should we look for? The uncertainty lingers, heavy and unspoken. And this is where the role of medicine becomes crucial. Families often rely on doctors to guide them, to explain what is happening in the brain, and to help them prepare for what's ahead. Yet too often, even medical professionals miss the earliest signs, dismissing them as normal aging. Which brings us to the front lines of this battle, the doctors and specialists who see memory decline every day, and whose insights may hold the keys to catching it before it's too late. The waiting room is quiet, filled with the soft shuffle of magazines and the nervous tapping of canes. A senior couple sits side by side. The husband stares blankly at the floor while the wife gently squeezes his hand. When their names are called, they step into a brightly lit exam room where a physician, often one of the first lines of defense against memory decline, waits with a clipboard and a compassionate smile. Doctors on the front line of aging and memory face a profound challenge. Memory loss does not announce itself clearly. It hides in excuses: "I'm just tired, I forgot my glasses." We all get a little absent-minded. Too often, physicians must separate harmless forgetfulness from the subtle beginnings of something more serious. Take Dr. Patel, a geriatrician in Chicago. Over his 20 years of practice, he has seen hundreds of patients arrive with concerns about memory. Some simply misplaced their keys. Others couldn't recall their grandchildren's names. His job is not only to test memory but to listen carefully to families who notice changes patients may not admit. "Families are my best diagnostic tool," he explains. "They see the slips long before we do." Medical science has developed tools to detect cognitive decline. The Mini-Mental State Exam, MMSE, and the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, MoCA, are short tests that measure memory, attention, and problem-solving skills. Something as simple as recalling 3 words after a few minutes, or drawing a clock face, can reveal weaknesses in the brain's architecture. But even these tools have limits. They are snapshots in time, unable to capture the gradual erosion that happens over years. That is why many doctors now stress the importance of baseline testing. By recording memory and thinking ability while a patient is still relatively healthy, doctors can track subtle changes over time. A drop of just a few points on these tests may flag early decline, years before a full dementia diagnosis. Yet here lies a painful truth: in the United States, nearly half of dementia cases go undiagnosed until the disease is in its moderate or severe stage. Families often come to doctors only when daily life is already unraveling. Early opportunities to slow the decline, through diet, exercise, medication, or lifestyle changes, are lost. Still, doctors carry hope in their toolkit. New imaging technologies, like PET scans and advanced MRIs, allow specialists to detect amyloid plaques and tau tangles long before symptoms appear. Blood tests are being developed to detect Alzheimer's-related proteins with a simple vial of blood. These advances mean doctors may soon diagnose memory disease as easily as diabetes or high cholesterol, giving families precious time to act. And then there is the doctor's other role: healer of the heart. A medical diagnosis of memory decline is more than numbers on a chart. It is a wound in the family's soul. Physicians often find themselves not just prescribing medication, but offering reassurance, hope, and guidance through the storm. "You are not alone," they tell families. "We will walk this path together." But medicine can only go so far. Even the best doctors cannot stop the emotional toll of watching a loved one fade. And one of the greatest accelerators of memory decline is something no prescription can fix: loneliness. In the next part, we will step into the silent rooms of seniors living alone, where isolation itself becomes a thief of memory. The television hums softly in the background, playing to no one. A senior man sits at his kitchen table, staring at a steaming cup of tea that has long since gone cold. The walls are lined with photographs: children, grandchildren, friends, all smiling, all frozen in time. The house is quiet. Too quiet. Loneliness, though invisible, presses down like a heavy blanket. For many seniors, this silence is not just sad, it is dangerous. Social connection is more than a luxury, it is medicine for the brain. When we talk, laugh, share meals, or simply sit with others, our brains release chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine, which support learning and memory. But when seniors are isolated, the opposite happens. The hippocampus, already vulnerable to age, shrinks faster. Neural connections weaken. Studies published in the journals of gerontology reveal that seniors who are socially isolated are nearly 50% more likely to develop dementia than those who stay socially engaged. Consider Frank, a retired postal worker. After his wife passed away, he withdrew into his home. The bridge games he once loved, the church gatherings he once attended, he stopped going. At first, it was grief. Later, it became habit. Within 2 years, Frank's daughter noticed he repeated himself in phone calls and forgot where he kept his mail. His doctor explained that it wasn't just age, it was the weight of loneliness accelerating his memory decline. Loneliness affects the brain in hidden ways. It raises cortisol, the stress hormone that corrodes the hippocampus. It disrupts sleep, leaving the brain unable to process memories. It fosters depression, which in itself is linked to poorer cognitive performance. The result is a spiral: the lonelier one feels, the weaker memory becomes, and the weaker memory becomes, the harder it is to reach out socially. And yet, hope exists. Simple social interactions, even brief ones, can reignite the brain. A University of Michigan study showed that seniors who engaged in just 10 minutes of meaningful conversation performed significantly better on memory tests than those who remained isolated. 10 minutes. That is the power of connection. Programs across the United States now pair isolated seniors with volunteers or even therapy animals. In some communities, intergenerational programs bring school children to senior centers, where stories and laughter flow across the age divide. The results are profound: memory improves, mood brightens, and loneliness loosens its grip. But perhaps the most touching truth is this: memory itself often lives in relationships. A song shared with a friend, a recipe cooked with a spouse, a story told to a grandchild, these moments weave memory into life. When companionship disappears, so too does one of the brain's greatest anchors. The question, then, is how seniors can actively protect themselves. Beyond doctors, beyond family, beyond community, what small, daily habits can each person cultivate to build a shield against decline? That is where we turn next, to the quiet power of small habits that guard the mind and give hope, even in the face of the silent thief. Sometimes, the greatest shields against memory decline are not grand medical breakthroughs, but the quiet choices made in the flow of daily life. A crossword puzzle in the morning newspaper. A 20-minute walk after dinner. A phone call to an old friend. These may seem ordinary, but for the aging brain, they are armor. Neuroscientists call this concept cognitive reserve, the brain's ability to build a buffer of resilience through habits and stimulation. Imagine a library filled with books. The more shelves you build, the more space there is to store memories, even if some pathways become blocked. Seniors with richer cognitive reserves, developed through daily habits, often experience slower decline, even when their brains show physical signs of aging. Consider George, a 75-year-old retired carpenter. Every morning, he reads the newspaper aloud to his wife, underlining words he doesn't know. Later, he tends his small garden, counting the seedlings and measuring their growth. These rituals may look simple, but they engage language, memory, and problem-solving. His doctor tells him he is doing more for his brain than most medications could ever provide. Science supports this. The ACTIVE study, one of the largest trials on cognitive training in older adults, found that seniors who practiced mental exercises, such as memory strategies, reasoning games, or speed of processing tasks, not only improved their performance but retained benefits for up to 10 years. The message is clear: habits matter. But it is not only mental habits that protect memory. Physical routines, such as stretching, yoga, or a short walk, boost oxygen and nutrients to the brain. Social habits, like weekly calls with family or joining a community group, create emotional anchors that keep loneliness at bay. Even simple rituals, writing in a gratitude journal, listening to favorite music, preparing meals from scratch, help anchor the mind in the present, strengthening memory pathways through repetition and meaning. Then there are protective lifestyle habits, staying hydrated, avoiding excess alcohol, quitting smoking. Each of these reduces stress on the brain's delicate structures. Even hydration matters. Studies show that mild dehydration can impair memory and attention, especially in older adults. Something as small as keeping a glass of water nearby can make a difference. And yet, the greatest power of small habits is not only in science, but in dignity. They give seniors a sense of control. In a world where memory can feel like it is slipping away, choosing to read, walk, connect, or rest becomes a declaration: I am not powerless. Still, there is confusion. Many seniors believe myths, that all memory decline is Alzheimer's, that nothing can be done, that it is simply part of aging. These beliefs themselves can be dangerous, leading to hopelessness and inaction. Which brings us to the next step: separating myth from truth, and discovering what memory decline really means for the aging brain. Walk into any senior gathering, and you'll hear it: "Of course I forgot my keys, I'm old," or "Don't worry, everyone loses their memory after 70. These statements, often spoken with a chuckle, reveal a powerful misconception that all memory loss is inevitable and untreatable. But the truth is far more complex. Not every lapse is Alzheimer's. Not every stumble of memory is a sign of doom. And believing these myths may keep seniors from taking steps that could protect their brains. One of the most common myths is that memory loss equals dementia. In reality, there are many causes of forgetfulness: medication side effects, vitamin deficiencies, thyroid issues, poor sleep, depression, and even dehydration. A senior who forgets names may simply be dealing with stress or lack of rest. When these underlying causes are treated, memory often improves. Another myth: the brain stops growing after youth. For centuries, this was considered fact. But modern neuroscience has shattered it. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire, adapt, and form new connections, persists throughout life. Seniors who learn new skills, from painting to playing an instrument, can literally reshape their brain. This means growth is possible, even at 80. Then there is the myth that crossword puzzles alone will save your memory. While mental exercises help, they are not enough in isolation. True protection comes from a holistic approach, combining mental challenges, physical movement, healthy nutrition, stress management, and social engagement. Memory thrives on variety, not repetition of the same single activity. Perhaps the most dangerous myth is, nothing can be done. This belief leaves seniors resigned, vulnerable to decline. In truth, lifestyle changes can have profound effects. The Lancet Commission reported that up to 40% of dementia cases worldwide could potentially be delayed or prevented through modifiable factors: controlling blood pressure, staying active, protecting hearing, and maintaining social connections. Take Irene, a 70-year-old widow who once believed her memory loss was hopeless. "It's just my age," she told her doctor. But after addressing her vitamin B12 deficiency, improving her diet, and joining a weekly dance class, Irene not only felt more alert but rediscovered joy in life. Her story is proof: the myths we carry can be more damaging than the truth itself. Dispelling these myths opens the door to something powerful: hope. And science is answering that hope with breakthroughs once thought impossible. Today, researchers are uncovering ways to not only slow decline, but to regenerate parts of the aging brain. Which leads us to our next chapter, a journey into the cutting edge of modern science, where new discoveries promise that the silent thief of memory may one day be stopped in its tracks. For generations, memory decline was seen as a one-way road, a slow descent with no return. Families whispered about it in hushed tones, doctors could offer little beyond comfort, and seniors braced themselves for the inevitable. But today, a quiet revolution is unfolding in laboratories and clinics around the world. The story of the aging brain is no longer just about loss. It is about possibility. One of the most remarkable discoveries is the brain's ability to generate new cells, even in later life. At Columbia University, researchers found evidence of neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons, in the hippocampus of adults well into their 70s. This means that even as memory falters, fresh cells may still be born, offering a chance for repair. Scientists are now exploring how exercise, diet, and even specific medications can enhance this process. Then there is the field of targeted therapies. Medications like aducanumab, though controversial, represent the first attempts to directly target amyloid plaques, the sticky proteins long associated with Alzheimer's disease. While results are mixed, they mark a turning point. Medicine is no longer just treating symptoms, but attacking root causes. Beyond drugs, technology is stepping in. Researchers at MIT have experimented with gentle pulses of light and sound at a frequency of 40 Hz, which appear to stimulate brain waves that clear toxic proteins. Imagine it, non-invasive therapies that use rhythm itself to heal the mind. Meanwhile, blood tests once thought impossible are becoming reality. A simple vial of blood may soon allow doctors to detect Alzheimer's-related proteins years before symptoms emerge. Early detection means early intervention, giving families precious time to act. But science is not only about machines and medicine. It is also about harnessing the power of lifestyle with precision. Programs like cognitive training use personalized computer exercises to strengthen attention, memory, and problem solving. Brain scans reveal that these trainings don't just improve test scores, they physically reshape neural pathways, proof of neuroplasticity at work. Consider Daniel, a 74-year-old veteran who enrolled in a memory research program at a university hospital. Initially, he could barely recall lists of 3 words. After 6 months of structured brain exercises and lifestyle changes, he astonished his doctors by recalling 12-word lists with ease. His improvement wasn't magic, it was science applied to the aging brain. And yet, perhaps the greatest hope lies in the union of science and humanity. Research shows that purpose itself, having a reason to wake up each morning, protects against cognitive decline. Whether it's volunteering, mentoring younger generations, or nurturing a garden, meaning fuels the brain in ways no pill can. The future of memory health will not be one silver bullet. It will be a tapestry: medication, technology, nutrition, exercise, mental training, social connection, and personal purpose woven together. Each thread strengthens the whole. But even as science advances, another question remains: beyond neurons, beyond plaques and proteins, what does it mean to age with memory? If names fade, but wisdom remains, how do we define the true legacy of an aging mind? That takes us to our final step: reclaiming the narrative of aging itself, where memory is not just what is lost, but what endures. An old photograph sits in a wooden frame, a family gathered at a picnic table, laughing, their faces bright with youth. The senior who owns this photo can no longer recall every name, every detail, but the warmth, the laughter, the love in that moment. It is still there. This is the paradox of aging and memory: even as details fade, the essence of life often remains. Too often, society tells a narrow story. It paints aging as decline, memory loss as tragedy, and seniors as shadows of their former selves. But that is not the full story. To reclaim the narrative of aging is to see memory not just as data stored in the brain, but as a living legacy, woven into the people we have touched, the wisdom we share, the love we give. Take Maria, an 82-year-old grandmother diagnosed with mild dementia. She forgets her grocery list, repeats questions at dinner, and struggles with numbers. Yet when her granddaughter asks about her childhood in Cuba, Maria's eyes sparkle. She recounts the smell of the sea breeze, the rhythm of music in Havana streets, the courage it took to immigrate. Though recent memories slip, the deep ones hold fast. Her family realizes, even with memory loss, Maria carries stories no one else can tell. Science supports this resilience. Research shows that while episodic memory, the recall of daily events, often weakens with age, semantic memory and emotional memory can endure. Seniors may forget what they ate for breakfast, but they remember the moral lessons of their lives, the skills they honed, the love they poured into family. These are not erased, they are transformed into something deeper. And perhaps this is the wisdom of aging, that a person is not defined only by what they remember, but by the meaning they carry. A forgotten name does not erase a lifetime of love. A missed appointment does not cancel decades of purpose. In fact, many cultures view elders not as fading minds, but as living libraries, keepers of traditions, guides for the future. In reclaiming the narrative, families too must shift their focus. Instead of asking, "What is slipping away?" they might ask, "What remains?" A shared song, a cherished prayer, a gentle smile. These moments may become the anchors of connection when memory falters. So, as the silent thief of memory continues its work, we must remember this: it cannot steal wisdom. It cannot erase the impact of a life lived with courage and love. It cannot silence the stories that echo in children, grandchildren, and communities. But this leaves us with one final reflection. If the journey of memory and aging is not about defeat, then what is it truly about? Perhaps, in the end, the measure of a long life is not found in perfect recall, but in the ability to add life to our years, even when years take from us. That is where we will close our journey, in a reflective moment of hope, where memory may bend, but the spirit endures. The journey of memory is both fragile and profound. We began with the first forgotten name, a moment so small it could be brushed aside, yet heavy enough to stir fear. We traveled through the hidden architecture of the brain, the quiet unraveling of routine, the weight of stress, sleep, food, movement, family, doctors, and loneliness. Along the way, we saw the myths that cloud our understanding, the science that lights a path forward, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. But now, as we close, let us pause and reflect. Memory is not just a storage box of facts and faces. It is the story of who we are, the laughter we've shared, the lessons we've learned, the love we've given. And while aging may blur some of those details, it does not erase the meaning behind them. Perhaps the true measure of aging is not in what is lost, but in what remains. A smile exchanged with a loved one. The wisdom that flows in a conversation. The strength found in resilience, in showing up for another day with courage. These are not erased by time, they are deepened by it. Science offers hope, and daily habits offer protection, but the greatest shield may be purpose. A reason to rise in the morning, a voice to encourage others, a story to pass on. Purpose keeps the mind alive even when memory falters. So, if you are listening now, let this be your takeaway: you are not powerless against the silent thief. Every step you take, every meal you choose, every conversation you share is an act of defiance, a way of telling your brain, "I am still here, I am still living." Aging will touch us all. Memory may fade, but life's essence, connection, love, wisdom, remains. And perhaps healthy aging is not about adding years to life, but adding life to years. So hold on to your routines, nourish your body, move with purpose, connect with others, and above all, cherish the story you are still writing. Because even as memory slips, your legacy endures, in the hearts and minds of those who love you.